Good morning and happy Wednesday of October. Hope you all are doing well. So glad that you guys have joined us for this month's Power Packed webinar with IBHS. Excited to have you on. If you are listening and can hear my voice, welcome to this month's AtlasPro Plus webinar. Glad you're on and glad that you are here. Good morning. You all can hear me via chat. You should be able to jump in here via chat. Good morning, Liz. That's right. Go ahead and put something in the chat. Let us know that you can hear okay. We've got a power-packed webinar today with lots of our favorite panelists. I see Paul is in the house. Good morning, Paul. If you want to jump on camera, we could chat and say good morning. Excited to be talking about hail resiliency and what that looks like. You know, we have had one of the most epic hurricane years this year. It's been crazy on top of COVID. So I know that this is a really hot topic. So I'm excited that we're going to be able to share this with you guys. Paul, are you on? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but my camera's not working. So it says I'm locked out for some reason, but that's fine. That's fine.
All good. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm great. Paul, I was just telling our listeners, you know, this is a really important webinar this month because we're taking, you know, some of the things that we just recently talked about at our Platinum event and applying it here. But the hail and storms have just been crazy this year, more than ever.
Yeah, no kidding. It seems like there's a storm after storm. It doesn't matter if it's tornadoes, hurricanes, and now there's even snow in the Midwest and the Northeast. So
I saw that. That is crazy. If you're in the Midwest, shout out to you. I know Dave Louis on, and let us know how the weather is. I saw this morning on the news, there's a couple inches of snow.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, we're still 80 degrees here in Atlanta. So, you know, knock on wood, we like it that way.
All right. Well, I will go ahead and start us off.
Thank you very much. It's definitely something that I'm pretty passionate about, and kind of as I've gotten into the industry, I didn't come. A lot of people come into this industry, whether it's they typically start in the roofing side, and like you said with me, it didn't come that way. I'm a weather nerd. I love weather more than anything. In fact, I don't really like roofing all that much. So, but I've gotten really interested in what weather does to roofs, which has been, a really interesting aspect for me. And as I've learned and dealt with contractors and insurance companies and adjusters and, learned what all these different areas of the industry go through, we've learned that the weather, it's not just a cut and dry. It doesn't just happen, to one roof or the other. And so we started trying to figure out why is that? Why is one roof damage and not the one next door to it? There's just so many different variables that go into weather and how it impacts roofs. And so that has become very, very interesting to me, to the point that, you talked about me being a storm chaser. I actually have a truck that we drive out into storms with a roof in the back, just so we can video what happens to that roof. And so it's very, very interesting to me. And it's something that, is really, really exciting. So, one of the things that goes into that, though, is like, how do storms develop? And so you can see here on my slide that we put together to kind of come up with, how does a thunderstorm develop? Because that plays a really big role in where hail happens, where the volume of hail happens, and where, maybe it's rain or not. So in this graphic, this is kind of a broad overview. There's one piece to this graphic that I love that's missing, but it gives you an idea of how you have an updraft in a thunderstorm and you have a downdraft in a thunderstorm. And so those two different areas, and they're extremely important. The updraft is basically the way that the thunderstorm breathes. It inhales with the updraft and it exhales with the downdraft. So that's how it gets rid of air and brings air in. But hail develops in the updraft region of the thunderstorm, which are two separate areas of the thunderstorm. And so this graphic actually shows that. You can see how the hail, which it actually develops in what's called super cooled water. It'd be really cool to do an experiment with this, and we don't have that in front of us, but super cold water is actually water that is below freezing. And so what happens is that water's below freezing, and when it's touched with another molecule, it just instantly freezes. And so what happens is we get a lot of those molecules together, and that storm actually collides and brings those together. And so they basically merge and form layers. Sometimes bigger ones go into other bigger ones, and they form these bigger hailstones, and they stay up in that cloud until they get too heavy, and then they fall out. You can see where the hailstone just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then eventually it falls out. What's nice to know, at least when you're looking at radar and how you're analyzing a thunderstorm, is where does that bigger hail fall out? And typically it's underneath the updraft. So it's right next to the updraft, right before you would get into that. And so you can kind of see it in that picture. It's like right on the line right there. And here's actually a picture of what it looks like in real life. So this is a thunderstorm that I actually chased. This is actually this year. And what was really interesting, this is called an LP, or a low precipitation thunderstorm. And so we're actually looking at the updraft. That's what that dark base is. And I'm actually underneath the updraft of the thunderstorm. So the hail is developing, or the air is lifting where that dark area is, and then it's still lifting over the top of my head. And then the downdraft was actually behind me. But what was falling, it looks like nothing. We actually had tennis ball size hail falling in that picture though. So very, very large hail was falling at the time, and it was quite a bit of it. It actually covered the field that was right next to us. But you can't see any of it because hail doesn't show up as an image. We can't see it. It's not like a rain shaft where you can see this dark shield underneath it. So when it's all hail, that's what you get is kind of this clear view, but then tennis ball size hail. But you can clearly see how the updraft is there, and then behind me would be the downdraft, and then right in between that's kind of the sweet spot of where the biggest hail would typically fall. And so that's basically where you would see that happen. Now on radar, that's going to look a little bit different. So on radar, you're going to see some different things that will show up with that. And so we can actually kind of see the tilt in the way that it might look on radar. And so as we go forward to the next slide, you'll kind of be able to see what that looks like and what we're able to analyze. So as you can see, it kind of looks like a big blob on radar. There's the pink is typically the area where you're going to see a lot of hail at. But there's different things that are actually happening. And this is actually a storm in the Denver area. And this is data that we use to analyze these thunderstorms. It's called dual pole radar. And it allows us to look at the hailstones not in a two-dimensional way. So we can actually see them kind of in a cross section like this. So it will shoot a beam out like this and another beam out like this. And that gives us a little bit of an idea of the shape of the objects inside of that storm. And that's a really big key to being able to determine hail versus rain versus big hail versus, the volume of hail even. So we can kind of get an idea. We can even get an idea if hail is melting in the thunderstorm or not. So there's a lot of variables that we can take into account that can go into causing damage. And those are the things that we typically want to try to figure out if we can, and get that into a way that as a contractor or as an insurance company, you can get an idea of how that affects the roof, the individual roof, in a way. And so, but when you look at this on radar, so we can see that we have, like on the right side, we call it correlation coefficient, which is, we call it CCs for short. That's actually a product that determines size. So it notices big objects. And hail tends to tumble. So it's going to see that tumbling effect of large hail, whereas raindrops fall like pancakes. So gravity pushes on the bottom, they fall like pancakes. And so that keeps them from having that same shape. Melting hail, I told you we could see that too in the shape. The way that melting hail works is it actually forms a ring around the outside. So as the hail melts on the bottom, as it falls, a ring develops around the outside. It's almost like a Saturn ring almost. And so we can actually see that shape as well. So it's kind of neat to be able to see that on radar. And so there's a lot of data that we can put into this. And then we talked about the 3D shape of the storm. So I said the first graphic that I showed you that had how hail develops, I said it didn't pick up the tilt of the storm. And that's what we would actually want to pick up here. And so in this 3D image, we can see the height of, and I've highlighted what's called DBZs, or base reflectivity, at 60 or higher, which is typically where we start to see hail form. And so what I've noticed here is that I've got this area highlighted. You can kind of see it there on the right side. It's got just a little bit of a tilt to it. Now this storm was kind of standing up and actually didn't last very long because of that. But so I wasn't able to inhale and exhale and try to do it in the same spot, which actually killed it. But you can kind of see just a little bit of a tilt. The more it tilts, typically the stronger that storm is actually going to get. But we want to see that heavy precipitation get up into that 15 to 25,000 foot range. That's where we really make hail at. But then that tilt is actually going to circle that back around to the backside, and it's going to fall out near the updraft. So even though that circulation of that storm is going to pull the hail over the top of somebody, it doesn't mean it's actually going to fall until it gets back here by the updraft. And that's where it's important for us. And one of the reasons why we use meteorologists is because we can analyze a storm and get an idea of where that updraft is, so we can accurately depict where the biggest hail is falling at. Now, the biggest hail, and that's kind of the problem that we're going to get into and talk a little bit more about, the biggest hail is not always exactly what it is that you're looking for. There are so many different variables in understorm that we don't want to focus on just big hail. So we want to focus on the volume of hail. We want to focus on the duration. How long did it hail for? We want to talk about the density of the hail. Was it hard or was it soft? And then we can even get into more of the, we can start talking about, the different types of roofing materials too, because those play a huge role in how damaging a hailstorm is. And as a contractor, what we want to do is we want to try to transition the mindset. So the mindset, so you can see here, we've got this storm that's laid out as a swath, right? And so a lot of times the contractor is going to look at this and go, okay, I need to go to the orange or the red because 100% that's where there's damage at. So everything in the orange or red is a total roof. But in reality, what happens is we get into those areas and we find some of the roofs are totaled, some of the roofs aren't. And then we start trying to, we question it. So what we hear at Hail Trace is we hear people say, well, the hail was spotty. So it wasn't consistent. It didn't fall. It wasn't the same size in the same locations. And while that is true, it is possible that hail could be spotty. And with radar, we only get a singular image. So we get a picture of and then we get a picture of the storm, and then 2.5 minutes later, we get another picture and another picture. And what happens in between, we don't really have a way of knowing. But for the most part, they are fairly consistent. So they do produce hail. They just kind of ebb and flow and move in a way that maybe we can't tell exactly. But what happens is we end up getting this. And so I've kind of highlighted on this graphic, like a neighborhood, if you will. Let's just pretend that the green locations are maybe the ones that have damage, or we could flip it and say the orange ones are the ones that have damage. Doesn't really matter. But what that's telling us is I can promise you that there's about a 99% chance that every home in that neighborhood were hit by the same storm, the same level of intensity. Everything was the same. So we have to try to figure out what is it that was different at those properties that enable us to get the idea so we can tell the story of what happened at that property. And so there are a lot of variables that can go into that. And again, some of that could be duration. Some of that could be, again, the hail size plays a role. That's just one of the pieces though. What about other storms? I think that's something that gets left out. So, it could be that there are other storms that have caused there to be an issue. So maybe this neighborhood was impacted with a storm 5 years ago, and some of the roofs are replaced and some of them weren't. That could play a role. Maybe some of them have 3-tab roofs, some of them have impact resistant shingles. Maybe some of them have Atlas shingles, so they're better roofs, right? So there are different things that play into that can determine whether or not that property has damage. And so if we can get to the point where we stop focusing on a singular swath and saying, this is yes or no, this is what caused the damage that we found, and start putting ourselves in a position where we objectively look at these roofs and we say, all right, this is a 5-year-old roof. This is the shingle that it has. One of the things that we saw, this was in Yukon, Oklahoma, that was really, really neat. So we talked to a contractor that had installed a roof on one day, one on the very next day. It was in a cul-de-sac, and the storm hit 2 years after they installed the roof. And this storm had some fairly large hail. It was like 2.5 inch, but it was fairly isolated. So the volume of hail was low, so there wasn't a lot, but we did have some size to the hail. So potential that we could have totaled a roof off of this storm, but it wasn't 100%. And so contractor gets up on the roof of both of these houses, and one is totaled and one is not. Right. So I started asking questions on, well, how did that happen? Because I know they were both hit with the same storm. There's no way that one roof had hail and the other roof didn't have hail. So we have to start trying to figure out what is it. Well, so the first question I asked was, did you put a different shingle on? No, I put the same shingle on. I was like, wow, okay, well, that's interesting. So it's got the same shingle installed on the same date, hit by the same storm. One is totaled, one is not. And I happened to be looking at the roof, and one of the things that I noticed was that one of them, that it had 5 different areas of ventilation across the top of it, and the other one only had 1. And that's what we were able to find, was that the ventilation, so one of the attics basically was baking and just destroyed the roof because it didn't have enough ventilation to make the roof the proper temperature. Whereas the other one, it had the proper ventilation, so it was basically a younger roof. It hadn't taken on all that life cycle because of the heat that it had impacted the other roof next door to it. And that was the variable. That was the one thing that set that roof apart. And so as a contractor, I can kind of pay attention to that and understand the value of that storm because I have the ability to tell the story of that storm. And so we have to learn to kind of look at these storms and these roofs for what it is that caused them. And so it could be a history of weather that's impacted them. And so, you might look at it that there was a storm 5 years ago that had 1.75 inch hail that was maybe low volume. So maybe that gave it let's say a 20% chance that a roof, so 2 out of 10 roofs are going to be total because of the volume. Then you have a storm that did 0.75 inch or maybe quarter size hail, but had a higher volume. So maybe that gave it a 30% chance of being total. And then we had another 1 inch with isolated, and that didn't do quite as much to it. And then we had a 2-inch hailstorm that maybe was a lot of hail, and so maybe that totaled it out. Or maybe it was a combination of the first 3 storms, right? Each storm adds volume of hail to it, so it's not like the storm before didn't impact it. So if a roof was impacted with 10 golf ball size hailstones 3 years ago, and then 2 years ago it was impacted with 5 more, and then 3 years later it was impacted with 6 more, and then 7 more, and then 2 more, all of a sudden it's compiling up. So the damage doesn't just happen always with one storm. It can be an added value where it's basically adding in storm after storm after storm after storm, and that's what's causing the roof to be totaled. In addition to the roof variables, which the contractor is more qualified to talk about than I am, but those are the type of things that if we can get in that habit, what ends up happening is we don't have to focus as a contractor on the new storm. We can now focus as a contractor on where do I need to find damage? Because what we've learned is that in a particular city, you might have a hailstorm that comes through and damages 10,000 roofs. But odds are there might be another 20 or 30,000 in the same city that are damaged because of either a compilation of storms, because they've been hit over and over and over again, or because there's an older storm that maybe hasn't been worked. There are a lot of variables. And so if you can learn to take those into account, you can find those areas that have been impacted that can have some more significant storms.
All right. Well, so, Derek did a great job of setting up the mechanics of the storm and how violent and how strenuous it can be for products like roofing products. But let's go a little bit deeper and let's talk a little bit about what the problem looks like from a loss perspective and how homeowners experience it. And so, 90% of insured losses in the country that come from severe weather have roof damage of some sort, whether it's from hail or high wind or what wind-driven water intrusion. 90% of those losses feature failed roofs or at least roof damage. And on top of that, when a roof gets damaged and say the cover gets to be damaged, then you allow access of wind and rain to that deck that sits below it, especially if you're not using a real durable underlayment. Once that deck gets exposed, that water pours in there. So 60% of the water that hits an exposed roof deck is going in the house. But a sealed roof deck, an enhanced underlayment system, can repel as much as 95% of that water, keeping the damage to the outside, letting the family stay inside and keep using their house. And let's go even a step further, and let's put some dollar signs to it. If you have a fortified roof, or if you have a storm-resistant roof, you can reduce potential losses by as much as 300%. And what a critical role the roofer plays. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. I'm not telling you anything that Atlas doesn't probably spend a lot of time and energy telling you how important you are as a trade and as somebody who provides a valuable service to your customers. That system that's protecting all of their contents and everything that they hold dear on the inside of their house is under attack 365 days a year, 7 days a week. And if it can resist those extreme forces and keep the damage to a manageable area, we can keep people in their homes, and we can really keep that loss from being amplified unnecessarily. And one of the other challenges that we face, in addition to the economics of loss, is that people like me, I've been a contractor for an awful long time. I just need people to tell me what the right thing is to do. I prefer that it be based on science and data, and this is all good stuff. But the current testing that for impact-rated shingles, for example, is based on a steel ball. And I don't think we heard anything in Derek's presentation that there's a natural phenomenon that steel balls are falling out of the sky and causing damage to roofs, right? There's certainly a lot at play there. The ice can build up, the size of the stone can get massive, the density, the hardness, but none of it ends up being a steel ball. And so one of the things that we do at IBHS is we take that knowledge and we try to figure out where are there weak links in the chain where we can make a difference and maybe improve things. And so getting this shot of this on the screen here, that of our massive wind tunnel that's in South Carolina. In that wind tunnel, we can create 130-mile-an-hour winds. We can make full-size houses and roofs, and we can create realistic hail that mimics the same kinds of features that Derek described so well in his presentation.
That's right. Just to be clear, I've been there. It's a very impressive facility, and I've seen the hail testing and what you guys do to make the hail. But I think one thing that really stands out, and a lot of credit to your scientists and your teams that you guys are doing out there, is you're simulating almost as closely as you can real hail. So it's not round, it's got jagged edges, it's got different densities, and it's not a perfect steel ball dropping out of the sky like our current testing indicates. So I thought that's very interesting that you guys can create all different kinds of different hail events, different hailstones, different properties, depending on what you want to test, and some of the things that Derek was talking about, the different types of hail out there.
Yeah, and if our slide presentation cooperates as we start to click through it, you'll see some of the technology at work. And we do a lot of field work. We try to understand what real life hail looks like. And then we actually invented a technology that allows us to recreate those same characteristics in our research facility. We actually invented a hail cannon, or at least a hail manufacturing machine that can then be, those individual hailstones can be loaded into a hail cannon. The hail cannon is actually existing technology, but we can propel it at roof samples at the appropriate terminal velocity, and then really see what realistic hail, what the damage modes are. And one of the other challenges in the existing testing that exists is that when that steel ball hits the shingle, in order to determine whether a shingle actually passed the test, you have to look at the back side of it and see whether it cracked or split or if there's any damage. And unfortunately, there's just none of that happening in the field, right? We can't flip the house over and look at the shingle on the underside. We have to see what the damage looks like on the top to figure out if there's really an issue. And so, you know, what we've been able to do is through research, develop a different test. And if we can click through to the next slide there. You see us collecting some of that hail that Derek loves to chase around, and we can 3D measure it and 3D map it, and then we can bring that back and we can use this machine here to create hail, and then we can shoot it and we can look at the different types of impacts. There are, believe it or not, there's a big difference between hard impacts and soft impacts, and there's dents and ridges. Ultimately, what we've been able to do is create a more realistic test. That's the IBHS impact resistance test. And we tested IR shingles that are available on the market, and lo and behold, Atlas finished at the top of the rankings. And you know, looking at characteristics that actually translate into what the homeowner experiences and what you as a roofing contractor may see in the field. And so this is a perfect example of how IBHS takes science and research, develops something useful out of it, and then we have to have some place for that technology or that research to land so people can do something with it. So if we can go ahead on to the next thing. And what we're doing is we're relying and trying to figure out a way to help contractors like those of you who are here today, help your customers make sense out of something that's really confusing. This is when people are getting ready to buy a roof, this is what it feels like. Feels like a 50-lane highway that's got all kinds of circles and off ramps and on ramps, and they're really looking for experts to guide them through the product selection that's appropriate to them and help them sift through all the different things that are out there. So you guys and gals, as qualified and knowledgeable expert contractors, you can take that and you can change that experience for your customers into one that looks like this. So let's go ahead and click on to the next one. A straight and level path, right? A clear path to success, right? And how do we get there? Well, that, you know, your experience will help get you there, but also taking advantage of a voluntary program like Fortified. So I mentioned the research that goes on in our research center. That ultimately finds its way into the Fortified set of standards. And Fortified is a voluntary program. You can offer it at your discretion to your homeowners and your potential customers as a way of helping them address the concerns and the vulnerabilities that they have and the needs that they have. It's broken into 3 levels, and it starts with the roof. Every single fortified home in the United States has a fortified roof. Then it goes to silver and gold, each level adding additional levels of protection. But everything starts with the roof, and it can be really, really simple. As simple as nailing the deck down, sealing it up using a quality underlayment, putting on a appropriate edge details. Atlas has got some great details about how to secure their products at the edges to keep that very vulnerable area where it sees the highest pressures on the roof, the eaves and up the rakes, keep that stuff intact, keep it down, and then choosing a good quality roofing product. And we've got standards that run the gamut from hurricane through high wind and right up through hail. So choosing a good high wind resistant, impact resistant shingle is really the key to success for you and for your customers.
So, Fred, let me ask you a question just on the Fortified. Can you talk a little bit more about taping the deck? I mean, I think we all understand that if you fortify and secure the deck more properly to the frame of the home, it's going to be a little bit more secure. But why are you sealing the deck in between the boards, or why you have certain requirements for underlayments?
Yeah, sure. So that's a great one. So sealed roof deck is probably one of the things that separates Fortified, in addition to the impact standards that we just talked about. Sealed roof deck is one of the things that separates Fortified from standard roofs. And so sealing that roof deck, I mentioned before that that roof cover is very vulnerable. And you heard a lot of different ways that it can age dramatically differently depending on attic ventilation and the like. So as that roof cover is aging, if it fails for some reason, once a typical underlayment gets exposed, that exposes the gaps in the roof decking. And that's where high volumes of water can concentrate and get dumped into the house, and then you got real problems. You got real big losses. We can keep a lot of that from ever happening, keep it to the outside. We can avoid it. Doesn't mean that roof replacements aren't going to happen after severe weather. Absolutely they are. So nobody who's viewing this should think that, we're talking about killing off a valuable line of business. We're talking about keeping the damage to the outside, but using a high quality underlayment like the ones that Atlas offers, and a tape on those roof deck seams keeps that water out of there so the damage doesn't get amplified. And that's really one of the most significant keys to helping your customers live in a durable home.
Yeah, you made a great point, and a lot of people might think, well, you're just trying to kill the industry, right, with all these fortified roof systems. But, you're certainly not doing that. There's certainly plenty of business. There's plenty of storms. There's plenty of homes that are older. You're just securing the home of the homeowner you're doing business with, and you're giving them the best option available. And if they choose to go that route, then we do have a solution.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, we've been through a series of hurricanes over the last several years where a bunch of houses that have fortified roofs have been tested in real world, not just in the laboratory, but in the real world. And there's not a whole lot better calling card and not a better proof source for you as a roofing contractor that when your roof performs and your neighbor starts talking about, hey man, I did this fortified thing with my roofer. He put on these great Atlas products, and I ended up not having as much damage as you did. Maybe this is something you should think about. So that is happening more and more. And that's, something that we are excited to be able to help this group of contractors offer to their customers going forward.
Yeah,
so let's talk a little bit about yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, not to mention, even the deductibles. If you save your roof between 1 storm, 2 storms, or 3 storms, that's 1 or 2% of home value. We see those deductibles increasing every single year, and that's a lot of money that doesn't have to come out of pocket for the homeowner. If they can just, get a better system, get a better roof, and it lasts through some of these storms. A big catastrophic storm is a catastrophic storm. We get that. Things are going to happen, but it's for those, it's for that peace of mind that they can get through some of these weather events.
Yeah, and so, I'm going to talk about, in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to give you some examples of significant incentives that are out there for fortified roofs. I'm going to share with you a couple of really powerful testimonials from actual fortified homeowners. But before we get there, let's just talk about how a contractor who's viewing this can work with Atlas to put together a really high-performing system and offer a solution and a pathway to getting a fortified home that will unlock some of those great user experiences and those great incentives that are available in a growing number of markets. So it all starts with getting that roof deck. As a contractor, got to make sure that what you're installing over is in good quality shape. Otherwise, the roof itself, the cover that you're going to be known for, may not last as long as it should. So get that roof deck secured. Then you're sealing the roof deck. And if we go ahead and click there, so then you can use products, a couple of different products that Atlas has. There's a method to seal a roof deck that's called fully adhered membrane. So you can use it with an ice and water shield or a similar product to cover the entire deck. If you're in a climate where you want to do that at the eaves and in the valleys and then go the rest of the way with some other system, that's certainly possible. You can combine systems. But once you, if you choose to use a tape and underlayment system, you do have to put a tape down, but then you can choose one of Atlas's high-performing underlayments, like the synthetics or the heavier felts, ASTM D226 Type 2 level felts. They're more tear-resistant, and if you secure them using button cap nails, we've tested it to 130-mile-an-hour winds. They stay in place and they repel water for a good long time. So that's really a good quality choice that most of your customers won't appreciate unless you as an expert tell them the value of that. And that's a real opportunity for you guys to be able to offer that kind of insight and knowledge to your customers. Be an expert. The next thing that you got to do is use a starter shingle. So a manufacturer-approved starter shingle that keeps that eave, that rake intact and down where it's seeing the highest pressures on the roof when the winds really blow. And then picking a good quality roof covering, a roof shingle, particularly if you're in a high wind and hail-prone area, picking that IR shingle. the StormMaster Slate or StormMaster Shake, getting those products on the roof can really have a wonderful advantage for your customers. And then, of course, in hurricane-prone areas in particular, now you heard Derek say that it's not just hurricane areas, but in hurricane areas, for as far as Fortified goes, we do look at attic ventilation from the perspective of how effective is it at keeping wind-driven rain out of the roof, right? So as the wind drives the rain up the roof, if it's a roof vent, a ridge vent that's not prepared or not capable of repelling that water will just dump inside the attic. And so choosing good quality attic ventilation product is also a critical decision, particularly in those coastal markets. So let's go ahead and talk just a bit about the process, because I want to make sure everybody understands what the process looks like. In most markets, let's go ahead and switch to there you go, and keep mashing that button. In most markets, you're going to be contacted by the homeowner who's going to be interested in getting a fortified roof. And we, just so you know, we have a directory. So anybody who goes through FortifiedWise training for roofing contractors and successfully completes our exam, you get listed in our directory, and it becomes an instant referral source, and it's a third-party proof source that you have additional training that most roofers in your market will not have. And you can use that as a market differentiator. But the homeowner will call you and ask you for a fortified roof. If you come to terms on that, and you end up selling a fortified roof combined with all these great Atlas accessories and products, there is a requirement that you work with a third-party evaluator, and that third-party evaluator collects documentation, works with you. They're not designed to slow down your process. They're there to help make sure that we document what you're doing that's different, that's going to set that roof apart. You can coordinate with them, tell them what your schedule is, help them collect the documentation they need, but ultimately they take that documentation and they send it up to us at IBHS. We review every file that gets submitted, and if it meets the requirements, we issue a designation certificate. That is delivered back out through you to your homeowner, so that they can then go unlock a whole bunch of different incentives, and we'll talk a bit more about that now.
Zero, that's fine.
As I get to what the actual incentives are that are monetary, I do want to share a few user experiences with you so that you can understand that this really works. And these testimonials that I'm talking about now, these are part of collateral that we make available for free to you as FortifiedWise contractors, so you can use this in your digital marketing and your advertising, your sales materials. You can pull a lot of this stuff to make your presentations at the kitchen table that much more effective. So let's meet Paul Jackson here. Paul, his home suffered or was in a market where there was a Category 4 hurricane. His Hurricane Michael up in the Panhandle of Florida. Michael sat right on top of his house, and Paul was not out of his house for more than 6 hours. He didn't even have enough damage to file a claim. He couldn't even cover the deductible for the amount of damage he had in his house. Let's go to the next slide. I mentioned having a fair amount of houses that have been tested in real life situations. So Hurricane Dorian just last year, we had 1,000 homes on the Carolina coast, and Dorian went right over top of those homes. 99.5% of those homes kept all of the water that came along with that system out of the house. Even if there was shingle damage, the water was kept outside, and people were able to get back to normal much, much faster. And finally, let's talk a little bit about Mr. William here. Mr. William is not sure what happened to Mr. William. I think maybe Mr. William's the next one. But let's just let me share with you a couple of details about financial incentives. So as Fortified is gaining in popularity, different markets are offering incentives. And so Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma contractors, listen up. In those 4 states, there are mandatory incentives for fortified roofs. And for the example that you're seeing on your screen right now is for Oklahoma. A homeowner who has a fortified roof installed by you, verified by IBHS, can get up to 42% off their homeowner's insurance. That's a big number, especially in a market like Oklahoma. They have insurance as high as coastal states. Right? So we're talking about, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars each and every year that homeowners can save if they have a fortified roof. Right? And in addition to that kind of financial incentive, you get peace of mind. And that's what Mr. Adams here, William Adams is up in the upper part of Alabama, up in the Tuscaloosa area. He was our 15,000th fortified roof. Now we're over 20,000. But Mr. Adams lived in a very modest home. His routine was, if there was a storm in the forecast, he would run home to put buckets out to catch all the water that was coming through his roof and damaging his precious belongings. And now Mr. Adams has a fortified roof, and he says, it gives him confidence because he knows he's protected. And I can promise you, he's the kind of guy that tells all his neighbors, my roofer did this for me. So,
hey, Fred, you talked about incentives and those types of things, and we have that same those same incentive opportunities. If you put on StoreMaster Shake or StoreMaster Slate shingles from Atlas, you'll actually get a reduction in your homeowner's insurance premiums every year, sometimes up to 40%, right? Depending on the insurance company. Can you explain to us just a little bit more about what the homeowner might be able to expect? Is that from the insurance company paying reduced insurance premiums, or is that paying back for the upgrades? And what might be a total upgrade cost that a contractor can expect by offering the system? In terms of material cost, I guess.
Yeah. So those are good questions. And so the types of incentives that are available really run a pretty large gamut. So the most popular is an insurance incentive right off the wind premium, right? So it's a percentage of the wind premium. There's lots of things that go into calculating an individual's premium. So it's important for you and the contractors to make sure that the homeowner's asking their insurance agent the right questions, to provide information about what you're planning to put on, and that the agent can then provide an estimate of what the annual savings would be. The fortified designation is valid for 5 years. After 5 years, we go back out and make sure that roof cover is still in good shape and still performing its job, and we will reissue the certificate. So the savings that people can get is annual, and it can be renewed as long as that roof cover is in good condition. There are other incentives. There are a growing number of grants that are out there. Alabama, Mississippi, and North Carolina both have robust grant programs giving thousands of dollars to homeowners to be able to bridge the gap between a standard roof replacement and a fortified upgrade. And there are a growing number of insurance companies that are offering what's called a fortified roof endorsement. And what that means is if a roof is damaged and requires replacement under an insurance policy, then the insurance company will pay to upgrade that roof to a fortified roof. So there's really a number of different ways that capital is coming into this market and trying to incentivize people to choose higher quality products, good contractors that are going to deliver better performance.
Yeah, and insurance companies that have every reason to do it. You saw those stats earlier in your presentation about how much liability they have in a roof. So that's very exciting for the contractors listening on here, as well as the transferring that over to homeowners. That there's a lot of incentive, a lot of possible money out there that that they can have to help pay for these programs, and like you said, up to 5 years and maybe beyond, as their roof gets looked at.
Yeah, and so you asked about cost. So somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500. It depends on the size of the roof and the different materials that get selected, but somewhere around $1,000 to $1,500 is a pretty, we've looked at costs across a variety of markets, and that's a pretty consistent gauge of where things are. But different materials will drive that up or down. There is a cost to the inspection, and so typically it's a few $100s for the evaluator's time to be able to help collect that information and report that up to IBHS. But IBHS doesn't really, we don't view this as a profit center. I charge $45 for each roof that's submitted to us for us to review, and that just covers the bare minimum of our overhead expenses to keep the system going and the like. But our members, which are insurance companies at IBHS, our members pay dues every year that really funds our operation. So this is not something where I'm trying to sell something to this group of contractors and I'm trying to make money off of them. This is something that I want to make available that you guys can use because you have frontline engagement with those homeowners, and you have a real opportunity to be an agent of change in breaking this cycle of avoidable damage that happens every year. So anyway, I just want to stress that, Paul, that really this is, like I said, it's voluntary, it's not mandatory. We're not seeking to make it mandatory, and it's not a profit center for IBHS. We want you to take what we know, use it to help your customers and to deliver great customer service and improve your brand and improve your reputation of your company in your market.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that sounds good. So, if they are interested in these programs, and they are certainly fantastic programs, how do they get more information? And is there anything you guys can offer these guys? Yeah, sure. So you're seeing a few examples of some of the collateral that we have and some of the other advantages, like I mentioned, getting into our roofer directory, becoming a lead source for you. We do have collateral that's available for free on our website for qualifying contractors. We put up their brochures, we put up their cut sheets, we do put up their social media ads. So if you happen to be social media savvy, you can put it on Facebook, you can put it on Instagram. We also do, we've launched this year a pretty robust campaign of awareness campaign to grow the awareness of Fortified, so that when you're talking to your customers, they've heard of it before. Don't be surprised if homeowners start asking you for a fortified roof. You want to be one of those guys that says, "Oh, I know what that is. I can do that for you." But we have that stuff available to you. As you can see on the lower right-hand side of the screen, there's a little estimate there of the cost difference between different types of roofs. But we provide a lot of material. Plus, we're a resource for you. We answer a lot of questions every week from roofers about how they can do make a change in how they're installing their roofs to deliver a better performing roof. But one of the things that I want to close off this, I really appreciate this wonderful opportunity to reach such a dynamic and prolific group of roofers. I want to offer some training to your folks. With COVID and everything that's gone on, we had to scramble and figure out a way to deliver training. We used to do it all in person. Now we've launched a virtual university. And if we can go ahead and advance to the next slide there, we have a virtual university called FortifiedWise University. The first courses we launched up there are FortifiedWise roofing contractor courses, one for hurricane, so if you're a coastal contractor, and one for high wind and hail. And that's everybody else that's not on the coast. Any inland community can benefit from this training. This training normally retails for the course and the exam for $150, but for this group of contractors, we've made available 20 free slots to take the training. It's 11 modules. It's about 2.5 hours of self-paced training. And then once you complete the training, if you opt to take the exam and become listed in our directory, there is a small charge for that exam. But you can go and look at the training for free. And if you like it and you want to have more of your folks trained, you can reach out and you can purchase some additional classes. We really do encourage you to put your salespeople and some of your project managers through the class so that they understand what you're doing different, and they can tell the homeowners all about that. But on your screen there, you go to fortifiedwise.com and you use the promo code ELITE, and that'll get you free training. Yeah, great, Fred. That is a fantastic opportunity. If anybody wants some more information on Fortified or even what IBH is doing, by all means, take advantage of the free information that they're offering our diamond and platinum contractors, and visit the IBHS site as well. They have a lot of great information on there as well. So thank you very much, Fred, for that. And Derek, for your expertise on storms and how they form and what they do and how they interact and grow. I think we can all benefit from that knowledge as well. I think there's a huge opportunity to continue to get educated on these types of things. So, the things that you guys offer at Hail Trace is certainly a valuable tool to all contractors, and they can certainly use those tools to more streamline and target some particular areas if they want to go after some of those hail events. But we certainly appreciate your time as well. Do you guys have any closing remarks?
I can testament to Hurricane Michael. I was in the eye of Hurricane Michael. That was an intense hurricane. So for a roof to withstand that, that's extremely impressive. So that's big time. We were actually in a parking garage, and the whole parking garage was shaking. The wind was so strong. Concrete parking garage. So impressive stuff.
We went back and talked to Mr. Jackson. I'll just say a little bit more about that. We went back a year later, and that's where that picture's from, of him in his orange shirt and his hat. And he talked about with a lot of pride that he'd only been out for 6 hours, and it came back. He had neighbors that still hadn't even started the reconstruction process, but he had never, hadn't really had left his home, except for that short 6 hour period when he had to evacuate. So anyway, we just as far as I'm concerned, Paul, we just appreciate the partnership with Atlas. You guys, lean in and look for innovative ways to develop quality products that deliver durability. We as a third-party research organization, we don't endorse products, but we do like to recognize folks that are really leaning in that space and doing something that makes a difference. And so we appreciate the partnership with Atlas. We appreciate the passion that folks like Derek have, and we're really just thankful to be a part of such a wonderful network of people who really want to make a difference in their communities and offer a great value in this space. So thank you very much for your time and for the attention of your contractors today. Appreciate that.
All right, well, great. That's fantastic, Derek or Fred. And on behalf of Atlas and all of our contractors, we certainly appreciate those kind words. And again, we certainly understand and recognize and see the importance of what you guys are doing, from understanding the damaging effects of a storm and really how to make a roof more resilient. So, I think this partnership is fantastic, and I think collectively we can continue to drive and move the market in such a way that gives the homeowners a truly fortified and resilient roof system that they can withstand some of these storms, these scary things that Derek is saying that he just goes out and enjoys. So we certainly appreciate and we certainly appreciate you guys' time. And we've also included a link on our website for you guys to go see that hail study that IVHS did, as well as Atlas with Core 4 Technology did rank #1. So we are proud of that. It was certainly unsolicited, and we just happened to be there, but we certainly stand behind our technology as well. So again, thank you guys. We appreciate it, and have a great rest of the week.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Paul and Fred and Derek. That was really insightful. Listen, if you have any questions, Paul's still on, our senior product manager here at Atlas. And Paul, one of the things that, I want to talk a little bit about as questions are coming in is, the fact that Fortified not only gives training, but they also have a full suite of marketing and promotional materials to help the contractors sell the Fortified Roof offering.
Yeah, they do. And, the easiest way to get that information is, of course, to go on their website or go to the link actually through Atlas. But the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety has done a fantastic job in elevating resilient roofs, right? So it's not for everybody. It doesn't, it might not fit some of the country, but it certainly fits in those parts of the country that have high wind and a lot of hail events. So their high wind and hail program really fortifies your roof system, and it's really from the standpoint of protecting the homeowner.
Yeah,
we're seeing larger and larger deductibles now. 1 or 2% of home value is what some deductibles are to replace roofs. And simple math, at a $250,000 home with a 2% deductible, that's $5,000 out of the homeowner's pocket. So do they want to do that every single time for a storm if they live in Tornado Alley or on the coast somewhere, or do they want to quite possibly get some subsidies from local government help to put a fortified system on there, or pay for the upgrade because insurance companies might reward them as well? So it's a fantastic program, and contractors should certainly look into it if they're in that part of the country.
For sure. Yeah, well, we're right at 11 o'clock. Any last words, Paul, for our audience?
Yeah, I think resilient roofs are very important. We make quality products. I think you heard that through the presentation. You can certainly visit our website. But one thing really caught my attention is ventilation. Improper ventilation can lead to a lot of things that people just don't realize.
Yeah.
And your shingles aging prematurely, so it's going to get damaged a little bit easier. And hail events can certainly bring that to the ugly light of getting damaged when maybe the neighbor's roof is not being damaged. So just a simple fix as proper ventilation can solve some of these problems.
For sure. And Atlas has rolled out a couple months ago our new ventilation line with our True Ridge and High Point products. And so if you're not familiar, be sure to go to atlasroofing.com/roof ventilation. And we'll put that link in the follow-up email that we send you all. We're right at time. Thanks so much, Paul, for bringing these experts in from Derek and Fred. And we just really appreciate all of this information. And guys, thanks so much for listening today. Looking forward to next month's webinar with you. And until then, live, roof, play together. See y'all.